So in this segment we are going to see how we can map a binary 1 to n or n to 1 relationship. So for each regular binary 1 to n or n to 1 relationship type R, we have to identify the relation that represents the participating entity type that has the n side of the relationship type. For example, here in 1 to n or n to n relationship, here we have the S entity is participating in the n side and T is the entity type that is participating in the one side. So in that case we are going to include a foreign key in S, the primary key of the relation, T that represents the other entity type participating in R. Okay, all right. So this relationship is a n to 1 relationship, and here S is the one participating on the n side and T is the one participating on the one side. So obviously we are going to have from other steps, from step 1, 2 and 3, we already have a relation for entity type S and for entity type 1. Okay, now we are going to map the n to 1 or 1 to n relationship. So we identified the entity S which is participating on the n side. Okay, so we are going to include a foreign key in relation S. Okay, and this foreign key so this foreign key S will reference the primary key from the other side. So S will include a foreign key, okay, and this foreign key is going to reference the primary key of the table T. Okay, now if the relationship has other attributes, all right, we are going to include the attributes in the same relation where we are including the foreign key. Okay, for example, in the entity S we are including the foreign key that is going to reference the primary key of the table on the other side. That means the relation that is participating on the one side. Okay, now this relationship, if this relationship has other attributes, we are going to include that with the same relation, okay, where we are including the foreign key. All right, let's see an example. Let's see in our company database we have employee entity and department entity. So employee and department has a relationship works for. All right, we know that in one department we can have multiple employees, but each employee is going to work in only one department. Okay, so that's the n to 1 relationship. Now employee is on the n side and department is on the one side. So we're going to add a foreign key in the employee relation. Okay, so we're going to add a employee in the we're going to add a foreign key in the employee relation, and how they are related with each other. Employee works in only one department, so the relationship attribute is actually the department number. Okay, so that's why we are going to add a foreign key DNO, okay, that is going to reference the primary key of the department table. All right, so remember this is the foreign key and this is going to reference the primary key on the other side of the relation, so the department table. So the attribute domain, okay, for the domain of the attribute for this foreign key has to be same as the attribute of the primary key. All right, so we're going to add a foreign key DNO, which will be a foreign key and which will reference the primary key of the department table. Now let's see works for has a special attribute joining date, okay, that will identify the joining date when the employee joined in the department. So if the relationship has a attribute joining date, we are going to add this attribute here in the same relation. Okay, now another example, uh, where we have 1 to n relationship. So department and project has a 1 to n relationship. So one department can have multiple projects, but every project has only one controlling department. Okay, so here project is on the n side. So we are going to add a foreign key. We are going to add a foreign key in the project relation. Okay, so in the project relation we are going to add a foreign key d number, which is going to reference the primary key in the department table. Okay, so department has the primary key d number, so we are going to add a foreign key d number as this with the same attribute domain, all right, which will reference the primary key of the department table. So now we are going to talk about step 5. So step 5 will talk about how to map a binary m to n relationship. Okay, means many to many relationship. So if we have a many to many relationship, for every many to many relationship type R, we are going to create a new relation S to represent R. Okay, so for every many to many relationship R, we are going to create a new relation S. All right, say for example there we have a many to many relation. Okay, this relationship is from S to T. Now from other steps, from step 1 to 4, we have already a relation for each entity S and another relation for entity T. Now as this relationship is a M to N relationship, we are going to create a completely separate relation like that. Okay, we are going to complete a separate relation like that. For each M to N, for each many to many binary relationship, we are going to create a separate relation. Okay, separate table. So we are going to include as foreign key attribute S as the primary key of the relation that represents the participating entity types, and their combination will form the primary key of S. Now in this new relation, in this new table, we are going to include a foreign key, one foreign key from participating entity type S and another foreign key from participating entity type T. Okay, so this is going to be the foreign key which will reference the primary key of T, and this foreign key is going to reference the primary key from S. Okay, and that's how they will show the relationship in the relational diagram. All right, now if the relationship has a special attribute, this special attribute we are going to also include in this relation, okay, or in this table. So let's see one example. Let's see, here we have a M to N relationship between employee and project. Now one employee can works in multiple project, and each project can have also multiple employees. So that's a M to N relationship. Now for each M to N relationship, we are going to create a completely separate relation or table. Okay, we'll give it a name. All right, now that tables will have a foreign key from each participating entity type. For example, employee has primary key SSN. Now works on will have a foreign key ESSN, and that will reference, so that will reference the primary key of employee table. Now project has a primary key P number, so works on will have a foreign key PNO that will reference the primary key P number of project table. Now this relationship has a special attribute hours, so this table will have a attribute hours. Okay, so this attribute we are going to include that in this new tables that we created for this relationship. All right, so we saw step 1 to 5. Now we are going to talk about step 6. So how to map a multi-valued attribute. So in all other steps we saw how to map a single valued attribute. Okay, now we are going to see how to map a multi-valued attribute. Now if one entity has a multi-valued attribute, we know that we represent a multivalued attribute using this double oval. So here it is saying that A is a multivalued attribute. Okay, and let's see PKAS, this is the primary key for this entity type. Alright, now for each multivalued attribute A, we are going to create a new relation. So this entity has one multivalued attribute. For each multivalued attribute, we are going to create a new relation. Okay, for example, here this entity has one multivalued attribute, so we are going to create a new relation like that. This relation R will include an attribute corresponding to A, okay, plus the primary key attribute K of the relation that represents the entity type that has A as an attribute. So in this relation, we are going to include an attribute A which is same as the domain of the multivalued attribute. Okay, and we are going to include a foreign key which will reference the primary key of the relation S. Okay, now the primary key of R is the combination of A and K. So combining this foreign key, okay, combining this foreign key and the multivalued attribute A, combiningly they are going to form the primary key. Okay, and this will be the foreign key that will reference the primary key of the entity type S. Now let's see an example. Let's say department has a multivalued attribute location. We say that one department can be in multiple location. Okay, now department has a primary key D number, and for department we say that from our step 1 to 5 we say that for department we are going to have a relation, means table. Okay, table for the department, and the attribute will be all the simple attribute. Okay, all right, now for the multivalued attribute we are going to form a separate relation or for separate table. Now we'll have a attribute location which will be the same domain as the location attribute. Okay, and we are going to have a foreign key D number which is going to reference the primary key of the department table. Now combiningly D number and location will form the primary key of the department location table. Okay, now step 7 from ER to relational mapping. Okay, so ER to relational mapping we have total 7 steps. Now this is our final step. What if we have a N-ary relationship? N-ary relationship means if we have a relationship where the participating entity type is greater than 2. Alright, so for example here we have a relationship where we have participating entity type is 3. We have S, T and U. Okay, total 3 entity types are participating in this relationship. So in that case, actually for N-ary relationship we are going to create a separate relation, separate tables. Okay, and we are going to include as foreign key attributes in S as the primary keys of the relation that represents the participating entity types. Okay, we are going to also include any simple attributes of the N-ary relationship type. Okay, so in these new tables we are going to include foreign keys from each of the participating entity types. So we are going to have a foreign key from entity S, we are going to have a foreign key from entity U, and we are going to have a foreign key from entity T, and each are the foreign keys that will reference the primary key of the participating entity types. Okay, now if the relationship has a attribute, we are going to also include that attribute in this table.